Welcome to Los Angeles, California, where in just a couple of days, all eyes will be on the site behind us for Super Bowl 56. But before tens of thousands of fans fill up SoFi Stadium, the days leading up to the big game are all about business. Every year, athletes use Super Bowl week to pitch their ventures and talk about life outside of the game. Today is no different. Joining us, we have Erik Dickerson, the NFL Hall of Famer, and Dr. Jim Walton, the league's first female coach, for this special edition of Next Play, live from Los Angeles. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Radio Row, the media epicenter of Super Bowl week in Los Angeles. You're watching a special edition of Next Play, our series about athletes and their careers off the field. Joining us first, we have NFL Hall of Famer, media personality, entrepreneur, and most recently, author of the book, Watch My Smoke. Let's welcome to the show, Erik Dickerson.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. So you retired almost three decades ago, and I'm curious, what's the emotional process like when you decide to walk away from the game?
Well, back then, it was a little bit different because they didn't really prepare you for retirement. You didn't have the things that the NFL does now for the players kind of prepare them to retire. And I really wasn't prepared. I mean, I'd saved money. I didn't think enough money to retire. But was I ready? Yes and no. Because I love the game, but I hate the game at the same time. Because I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do for sure. I had no idea.
And you were talking about the way that you saved, and I've seen you talk in the past about spending conservatively. How did that impact your ability to transition?
Well, my mother taught me, the big thing she taught me when she wasn't a finance person, she said, you got to save something when you put that money aside because, it won't last forever if you don't put it aside. And, we wasn't making the money the guys made. We weren't making that kind of money. I mean, I could play one contract and I'd be good.
Yeah, right.
One season. But, the best way to do it is just have someone you can trust. That's what it comes down to, a financial institution or someone you can trust. Not your little boy baby or little sick man and all that kind of. You got to have someone that knows finance that you can trust.
And you talked about some of the things that they have in place for players today. I know about some of the programs, the way that players get educated while they're still in the game. Do you think that your outlook on what you could have done after retiring would have been different if those programs were in place back when you were playing?
Oh, man, absolutely. For sure. It's no doubt. I mean, look, one of the big things now is all the tech things, and all the like things that the NFL is involved with. They want to get players engaged into. That would have been a big game change for me. It wasn't like that when I played back then. That's what college retired 1983.
And you were talking about the way that you played the game and your mentality, and also the fear that it could end at any time. I've seen you talk about the fear of injuries. How different do you think it would have been if something like that would have happened in the middle of your career? How would it, again, have impacted your ability to be doing what you're doing today?
I really couldn't tell you. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you, because I was always afraid. For some reason, I had a reoccurring nightmare about hurting my neck. And just by chance, lo and behold, that's what ended my career, with the neck, ended my career. And I don't know. I mean, I really don't, because, when you play a sport like football, it's a very physical sport, especially back then. It's very physical and it's very demanding. We didn't have the care that they have now. Like, we didn't have concussion protocol, no such thing. You got hit in the head, they come to the sideline, ask you a couple questions, your name, what team you play for. Oh, he's okay, put him back, he's just a team. Now you go to the whole concussion protocol.
And just a reminder, we're here with Erik Dickerson. Thank you to Ayu from Morocco, Ketia from Miami, Natasha, Christine from New York, Gina from Los Angeles. Thank you all who are watching the show. And a reminder that you can drop your questions and comments, and we'll be asking to Erik Dickerson here live. Just another reminder that we'll also have Dr. Jim Walton here later in the show. She's the NFL's first female coach. For the time being, though, we're here with Erik. Erik, you were talking about the amount of money that some of the players are making here today. Right, and also even back then, for the standards of the 80s, you were getting underpaid. I think everybody would agree now.
Yeah, they did.
Right, exactly. So that also led to a negative perception of you in the media. Did that affect the way that you were able to work with different people after you retired because you also went into the media yourself.
Yeah,
afterwards.
most definitely. I think, people had this perception I was a bad guy. I was a malcontent. Hell, I didn't know what a malcontent was. I heard the word before, and it was so wrong because that was not me. I think the most disturbing thing is that, not for me, because I didn't read articles. My college coach taught us, son, don't read those articles because they mummies and nugget mention behavior. So I never really read articles. But my mother, she would tell me, Erik, this stuff is such lies, stuff they're writing about you. I raised you better than that, and I know who you are. That was the hard part. I think for any parent, if you love your child and you saw something that was untrue, you take it personally.
So you're setting the record straight in a way right now. I mean, you're visible already, you're in the media, but was there a motivation to start rewriting the narrative of what people thought of you when you literally started writing with this book?
Well, for me, I've always been kind of a private person. When I retired, I wasn't trying to be out there in front of media or anything like that. I think when I started writing the book and talking about it, I wanted to set this straight. That was one of the things I wanted to do straight. I really did. Because it was such a misconception that the media had done me wrong, even going back to college. I was starting in college. They thought I was a bust my freshman year. They said they should take my scholarship. I mean, take my kid. I mean, take my scholarship. Give me some time. And then coming to LA, not be accessible to the media. I didn't like the media. I mean, I didn't want to talk to them because I never trusted them. So I had reason not to because what I thought they were, that's who they were.
You talked about college. We know how much of a star you were at SMU. And these kids today, now they have an opportunity to make money through NIL laws. How do you think that's going to change the way that people look at the college game and also the college players' ability to make it profitable for themselves?
I don't think it'll change college at all. I think the best thing that would happen in college. First of all, I always felt the NCAA was just like a bunch of pimps, pimping them young kids out. If they went out to dinner and had a dinner, somebody bought a dinner, it's an infraction. You got kicked out of school, lose your scholarship. To me, that's wrong. So yet, you can make all this money off of the kids' name and likeness, but they can't get a dime off of it. I just think that was it's been so wrong for so many years. So finally, they are able to make money off themselves, and they should.
I want to end with something that I saw you say on TV the other day when you were talking about Tom Brady. And you made a prediction, realize that you can't replace football. And I'm wondering, when guys walk away from the game, is that something that happens, that people try to replace football?
Of course you try to replace it. I mean, you do. It's like trying to replace something you love. If you had a ex-wife or a wife that you lost, and you loved her, you try to find somebody that can replace that feeling that you had. Football is something it's not irreplaceable. I mean, I don't care how much money you make, because Tom and his family, they have plenty of money. It's not about the money. He has great children, but the sport that you love, he played from being a kid. This is something you've never been a child, and you played it for so long. 22 years in the National Football League, 30 years probably total if you look at his whole career. It's hard to replace that because, you're never going to get that high again. Walking on the field, that moment in the locker room with the guy, like, yeah, guys, yeah. You never have that anymore.
Erik, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Once again, that was Erik Dickerson, NFL Hall of Famer and author of the book, Watch My Smoke. Next, we have joining us Dr. Jim Walton, the league's first female coach. But first, LinkedIn producer Rafael Garcia and creator manager Katie Carroll are going to walk us through how the creator economy is changing the way brands advertise during the Super Bowl.
Marketing at the Super Bowl is all about creating as big a splash as is possible.
The Super Bowl is the biggest television ad event of the year.
Is Pepsi okay? Did you just ask if Pepsi okay?
But even though TV viewership has declined over the past decade, ad costs are going up and marketers still want skin in the game. In fact, 40% of advertisers this year are new to the Super Bowl, despite the record $7 million price tag on a 30-second commercial. But now we're seeing brands invest in new and creative ways. Take last year, for example. Instead of spending $5.5 million on a 30-second ad, brands could have leaned into the digital world, where that is the equivalent of 275 million impressions on YouTube, 6.1 million paid clicks on Google Search, or 22 weeks of TikTok hashtag challenges with a top-tier influencer.
Nowadays, they don't have to spend so much money on promoting their product on TV commercials. They can just come to us, and we probably do it a little bit better. We probably get to the right people, more people better.
Advertisers are also noticing content creators like Alejandra Tapia or Nana Joe 19 on TikTok as a great business opportunity.
Let me show you guys how my whole collab with Lizzo went.
Now with over 5 million followers, Nana Joe is becoming a household name.
I see myself growing in multiple platforms with the brands and creators. It's I guess it's like the perfect mix.
Duet this video, show me what you got.
That's State Farm's ad campaign for this year's Super Bowl.
So get your head in the game, neighbor.
The insurance company picked TikTok over a TV spot and created the Team State Farm hashtag challenge. The company said that rather than focus on one day, they wanted to extend engagement from the regular season into the postseason and beyond. While brands like State Farm are opting out, others are doing both.
This candle tastes funny.
We have gone probably more quickly than we expected from a Gen Pop audience to a really highly targeted audience. And because of that, online specifically becomes a much more powerful tool for us. Obviously, the Super Bowl is somewhat of an exception, but as a business as usual and evergreen presence, we'll start to invest more into digital channels.
State Farm and Uber Eats are just two examples of how brands are adapting to the global influencer marketing world, which has more than doubled since 2019. Last year, YouTube alone paid over $15 billion to content creators. As the creator economy continues to gain significant momentum, it wouldn't be a surprise if ad spending on influencer marketing picks up even more speed in the near future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Radio Roll in Los Angeles, where we have a bit of a history lesson for you. During this season, we had a dozen female coaches on NFL rosters. At the start of the 2015 season, there was just one, and that's our guest sitting next to us today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jim Walton.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, so let's talk about that number, a dozen female coaches. How significant is that number?
It's wonderful. It's great to see the game continuing to progress and the talent that these women have in the game of football being recognized and doors continuing to be open, right? Hopefully it's ripple effects of greatness, right? That's what we want to see.
And I think people are familiar with the idea of women in professional basketball, professional tennis, but not so much familiar with women in professional football. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience actually on the field before you even reached the NFL?
Yeah, so the way I was able to break into men's professional football was actually playing first. Right, I played for the Texas Revolution, which was an indoor football team, Tim Brown's team. And then I was so successful with the guys and we had great relationships that former Dallas Cowboy Wendell Davis the next year asked me to coach. And it was interesting because instinctively I said no. They said, what do you mean no? I said, no, girls don't coach football. And he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said no, and I hung up on him. And the next day he called me back and told me about myself. He said, you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity? We're taking this job. I said, yeah. He said, good. I took it for you, and you can't quit. Otherwise, the entire narrative surrounding women coaching in men's pro football will be, we had a girl once, and she quit. And I tell people that story because, it is about the power of representation. I had never seen a female coaching men's pro football, so it had never crossed my mind that I could be that person. And so once I did, I was like, oh, I'm good at this. It's a football day. And the guys were actually really proud to be a part of history as opposed to, oh, we're not going to listen to her. And so when I went to Arizona, it was like an extension. And again, I think the guys had a different viewpoint than I did because they were so proud to be about changing the narrative of the NFL. And, they were so receptive and they said how refreshing it was. And it wasn't just refreshing because I was a woman. They loved having someone who had a PhD in psychology and looked at coach-athlete relationships in a different way.
Yeah, and I was actually wanted to get to that because you got the doctor of psychology before you even reached the NFL. I'm wondering, how does that inform the way that you connect with players, even when you're working with kids as well?
It's everything. I was actually coaching coaches on coach-athlete relationships and feedback mechanisms before I ever thought I could coach. I had gotten my PhD because I thought if I could get that when there was no trajectory as a woman in football per se, that I could be, a mix of theory and practice, right? A mix of, kind of done it on the field and doing it with psychology as well, so that way I would be a unique value proposition to the sport. And what I look at is the most important things in coach-athlete relationships are trust and love. And that these are, even though they're big, giant, looking like superheroes, right? Pads and a helmet kind of thing, underneath all that, they're very real people. And that should be at the core of everything we do as coaches and in life and in business, is you connect with the people, and then you have a much easier job working with them as players.
I see you talk on LinkedIn about Bruce Arians, who was coaching Arizona when you were on the roster. And I guess I want to talk about the people in power and the role that they play in diversifying rosters, whether it's in sports or in business. Because sometimes we talk about barrier breakers and the ones breaking the barriers, but the people that have the power to lower the barriers as well have a role to play. What is that role? What goes into, like, is there a way, what part of that role do you emphasize, let's say?
I think it's really important to have people in power in every conversation that recognize that diversity is a strength, right? BA is like, he's just that dude. He was overlooked as like head coach material for a long time because they said, he wasn't as polished as some of the other guys. He says no risk it, no biscuit, right? He is that dude that so many people love. And yet when he got the opportunity to be a head coach, his commitment was that he was going to make a difference while doing it, and he was going to do it his way, right? And so when I met him, he literally said, I don't know yet if I could do this. And he was like, I have to get a whole lot of yeses to be able to make this happen. But I want you to know it's in my heart to try. And he drove that conversation. I wouldn't have even been able to start the conversations to be able to make that happen. But he was the person who had the voice, the influence, was in the right rooms to make the right calls to open those doors. And so we need people who are in those rooms who, if we're talking about women, right, who think about what world do they want their daughters to see, right? Do you want her to see that, there are the same possibilities for her that there are for him? And if you're doing that, then what decisions do you want made on the behalf of your daughter, your sister, your wife, your mom? Because when you look at things through that lens, one that has a personal tie, then you're going to do things a whole lot differently. Because if someone else said to your daughter, you can't do this because you're a girl, imagine how that would make you feel. So we need people who look at situations through the lens of empathy, who are the decision makers. And once you realize that diversity is an absolute strength, right? It is the conversation that is well-rounded, and football is a perfect place to do it, because on the football field, we need everything from straight muscle to straight hustle and a whole lot of crazy, right, for it to work. But all the positions are fundamentally different. And what makes you different makes you special on a football field, and how we put them together is where that success comes, right? So if we're not looking at that in businesses, in corporations, in teams, then you're missing a whole lot of the magic that a different skill set or a different vantage point can bring to the equation.
We're having a fascinating discussion here with Dr. Jim Walter. Just want to say hi to everybody that's watching, William and Amora in New York, Florencia, Stephen in Florida. And we also have Valerie, who says, thank you for inspiring women all over the world. You talked about people saying yeses. Bruce Arians having to go to people to say yes as well. When you look at the slowly increasing number of coaches in the NFL who are female coaches, is it just down to that, people just saying yes, more people saying yes in different rooms, in different teams around the country?
I think what made BA so brave is he was the first one to do it, right? And now people are championing, he opened these doors, blah, blah, blah. And I say, and they're like, well, people should have done that. And I go, this is true. They should have. But imagine how hard it was to be the first person because things went well. Imagine if they wouldn't have, right? It would have been like, oh yeah, he's a brilliant coach. He's done this. He's won Super Bowls, OC, blah, blah, blah. But do you remember that time he lost his mind and hired that girl, right? That could have been the narrative. Thankfully it wasn't. And now it becomes, okay, we recognize that this is possible. And then seeing it there as a woman seeing it, it gives other women the inspiration to do it. And it gives other men the motivation to say, okay, this has happened and we should continue to see it happen. So we need both parts, right? We need that person to be there and visual. And then we need the decision makers who continue to say yes. And we also need people who actively invest in developing those pipelines so that women are given the same resources, because you can't just get there. There's not a job for showing up while being female, right? You got to get there and then you got to do the job.
So you use the interesting word there, pipeline, which some people roll their eyes at depending on what industry you're talking about. But when it comes to football, I'm sure that there are some people that, because of your story and others, are just now getting wise to the fact that there are women who are, let's say, even interested in being on rosters. Like their knowledge could be that far initiated.
Sure.
Do you think that there is a pipeline problem, or that is more so people getting overlooked when it comes to these opportunities in the league?
I think there's a lot of different elements that come into any equation, right? I mean, girls have not always had the opportunity to play football, right? And to get access at the same age. I didn't get to play football until I was 22, right? And there was no place to look and see a career trajectory for girls and women in football at that time, right? So where were you going to develop it to? Because there was no end game, right? Guys, there was an end game. You grow up as a little kid, you catch a pass, and you're like, Mom, I'm going to play in the NFL one day. What was the girl going to say, right? How was she going to dedicate the same time, resources, and life dreams to football that a boy was? So that becomes a dream problem, right? You got to have that seed, right? Whether it's in, like, say, the real world, or even in, in movies and stuff that you can see, like, those ideas haven't been implanted the same way. So that's the seed, right? And then it's, okay, we have a seed. How do we water it? Are we giving access to playing opportunities? Are we giving access to coaching resources? Are we doing all of those things so that dream can be fed, so that somebody could get the same roots and spread their wings the same way? So it's both, right? And you need people who not only open the door, but the ones who will then, like, curate the relationship so that young, fiery person, right, is mentored to, say, have that same path of maybe becoming a coach or a head coach. Does that make sense?
Of course. Now, let's get to what you were doing here. You have a busy week.
I do.
Can you tell us more about how you were getting involved here during Super Bowl week, and also why you're so concentrated on working at the youth level now?
Yeah, so I kicked off my Super Bowl week, I guess it was technically Pro Bowl week still, with a Gridiron Girls camp on Saturday. I partnered with one of the baddest women in sports. I mean, I'm just saying, Joy Taylor. And we brought girls out onto the field, Gridiron Girls. And I say that's confidence through football, and teaching them there's no game they cannot play and no field they do not belong in or on. So I had the girls on the field. Meanwhile, at the same time, Joy Taylor was doing her show, right, talking sports on the sideline. Then we got all the women out there, like MJ Acosta, right, Alex Curry, Kirsten, like these amazing women who could then show the girls that there are multiple places they can be in sports. And we also had guys like Ben Garland. We had the San Diego Rebellion, whole thing. And, when you take something that people have said was not for girls and that they're not supposed to do, and you take that out of the equation, the likelihood that they're going to continue to try things and go further in other areas increases as well. So whether or not they decide to play football for their whole lives or not, it doesn't really matter. But they need those hands-on experience where they can be elevated in confidence through seeing and interacting with all of those great women. So that was the first one. The next event that I did was the Stars and Stripes Bowl, where Sierra Delta took on NFL alumni, and the Snoop Special Stars opened us up. Hence Stars with the Snoop Special Stars and Stripes in a salute to service. And then after that, my big program, and I'm repping her today, by the way. I'm just going to shout out to my partner in crime yesterday, Alyssa Milano, who was a trailblazer in sports licensing industry. So 13 years ago, she really decided that women wanted something more than shrink it and pink it, and first went to the MLB and got the licensing to develop her own apparel. So I brought a concept to her, which is called A Day in the Life.
You're teaching me right now.
Yeah, and it brings women onto the field and into the game. We took over the Rose Bowl yesterday, and we had about 140 women out there who literally got a day in the life experience. So kind of what guys would do in training camp. They came in, they got an install, right? So you got to learn how to read a playbook and then put those plays from paper into action on the field. We taught them the basics of the game. They got to learn how to tackle. They got to learn gaps. They got to learn holes. They got to learn the route tree, all of those things, and doing it with Alyssa. And then we had, oh my gosh, we had an all-star lineup. We had members of Team USA like Adrian Smith and Ninji Martin. We had Lois Cook, who's also on Team Milk. We had Tony Harris, who's a college football trailblazer, the San Diego Rebellion. And then, oh yeah, we had some pretty amazing guys too, like Hall of Famer Rod Woodson, Will Witherspoon, Chris Draft, Ben Garland, all of these guys, Ricky Williams, all of these guys who have been kind of my big brothers in the game who loved it. Like Chris Draft, he was so funny. I talked to him this morning. He was like, Jen, my mom was out there and I got to show my dad a video of her tackling. And I was like, Chris Draft, how did I not know moms was out there? And the cool thing is we were powered by DraftKings. They saw it too. They want women to see that they can be in any game. So it was like this big vision that I had and crazily came together, and no more iconic place to do it than the Rose Bowl.
Well, listen, I have to say, first off, congratulations, because I saw you teasing a lot of this on LinkedIn. I'm happy to see that it all came together. Jen Welter, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And once again, that was Dr. Jen Walton, the league's first female coach and doctor of psychology. And thank you for watching today. Remember, if you want to get more stories like this, you can always subscribe to the Next Play newsletter, and you'll see as they come along. Thanks again for joining us for this special live edition, of Next Play from Los Angeles.